Welcome to True Crime Threads, where we unravel the darkest stories hidden beneath the surface. Today, we dive into the chilling tale of a young woman's secret affair that ended in betrayal, manipulation, and tragedy. Los Angeles, the city of dreams, where the sun always shines and opportunities seem endless, was a place that promised a fresh start for 24-year-old Emily Carter. She had moved from a small town in Oregon, leaving behind the quiet, predictable life she had always known. Emily was ambitious, with dreams of making it big in the fashion industry. She landed a job at a chic boutique in West Hollywood, a place that felt worlds away from the simplicity of her hometown. The boutique was frequented by the city's elite, and Emily quickly adapted to the fast-paced, glamorous environment. She loved the energy of the city, the constant buzz of activity, and the sense that anything was possible. But beneath the surface of her exciting new life, Emily felt a deep sense of loneliness. The city was vast, and making genuine connections proved harder than she had anticipated. Her coworkers were friendly but distant, and the social scene felt superficial. Emily missed the warmth and familiarity of her small-town life, where everyone knew each other and relationships felt real. It was during this time of vulnerability that she met Daniel Hart, a 42-year-old divorced real estate agent who exuded confidence and charm. Daniel was a regular at the boutique, often stopping by to pick up gifts for his teenage daughter. He had a way of making Emily feel seen, something she hadn't experienced since moving to Los Angeles. Daniel was handsome, with a magnetic personality that drew people in. He carried himself with an air of success, always dressed impeccably and driving a sleek car. Emily found herself looking forward to his visits, their conversations growing longer and more personal with each encounter. Daniel seemed genuinely interested in her life, asking about her dreams and offering advice on navigating the city. He shared stories about his own struggles and triumphs, painting a picture of a man who had worked hard to build a life of luxury. Their connection deepened quickly, and before long, Emily found herself entangled in a secret affair. Daniel was still legally married, though he claimed to be in the process of a divorce. He explained that the separation was amicable, but the paperwork was taking longer than expected due to financial complications. Emily knew the relationship was risky, but the attention and affection Daniel showered on her were intoxicating. He made her feel special, something she had been craving since her move to the city. Their relationship was clandestine, filled with stolen moments in dimly lit restaurants, secluded beach spots, and anonymous hotel rooms. Daniel was careful to keep their affair hidden, explaining that it was necessary to protect his daughter and avoid complicating his divorce proceedings. Emily understood, or at least she told herself she did. She was willing to wait for him, believing that their love was worth the secrecy. But as the weeks turned into months, Emily began to notice small cracks in the perfect image Daniel had painted. He would cancel plans at the last minute, citing work emergencies, or disappear for days without explanation. There were times when his phone would ring, and he would step away to take the call, returning with a vague excuse. Emily tried to brush off her doubts, convincing herself that Daniel's busy schedule was just part of his demanding career. Despite her growing unease, Emily couldn't deny the way Daniel made her feel. He was her anchor in the chaotic city, the one person who made her feel like she belonged. But as their relationship continued, the weight of the secrets and lies began to take its toll. Emily found herself caught between the excitement of their affair and the nagging feeling that something wasn't right. Little did she know, her life was about to take a dark and unexpected turn, one that would shatter the illusion of the glamorous life she had been chasing. As the months passed, Emily and Daniel's relationship grew more intense. They spent countless hours together, exploring hidden corners of Los Angeles and creating memories that felt like they belonged in a movie. Daniel continued to shower Emily with affection, buying her expensive gifts and taking her to exclusive places she could never have afforded on her own. He spoke of a future together, promising that once his divorce was finalized, they could be open about their relationship. Emily clung to these promises, using them to silence the doubts that occasionally crept into her mind. But the cracks in their relationship began to widen. Daniel's excuses for canceling plans became more frequent, and his explanations grew less convincing. He would often mention late-night meetings or unexpected business trips, but Emily couldn't shake the feeling that he was hiding something. She started to notice small details, a faint perfume on his clothes that wasn't hers, or the way he would quickly switch his phone to silent when they were together. One evening, while scrolling through social media, Emily stumbled upon a photo that stopped her in her tracks. It was Daniel, smiling arm in arm with his estranged wife, Claire, at a charity gala. The caption read, "Celebrating 15 years of love and partnership." Emily's heart sank as she stared at the image. The man who had promised her a future was still publicly presenting himself as a devoted husband. When Emily confronted Daniel, he was quick to dismiss her concerns. He explained that Claire was trying to maintain appearances for the sake of their daughter, and that the gala was just a formality. He assured Emily that their separation was real, and that he was only waiting for the right time to finalize the divorce. Emily wanted to believe him, but the seed of doubt had been planted. The anonymous messages started shortly after. At first, they were vague photos of Emily and Daniel together, taken from a distance, with no accompanying text. Then came the threats: "Stay away from him, or you'll regret it." Emily was terrified. She showed the messages to Daniel, but he brushed them off, suggesting they were from a jealous ex or someone trying to scare her. He urged her not to let it affect their relationship, but the messages kept coming, growing more menacing with each one. Emily's anxiety began to consume her. She changed her routines, avoiding the places she and Daniel frequented and taking different routes to work. She started looking over her shoulder, convinced she was being watched. The once glamorous city now felt like a maze of shadows and danger. One night, as Emily walked to her car after work, she was approached by a woman in a hoodie. It was Claire. Her face was stern, her voice low but firm. She warned Emily to stay away from Daniel, revealing that he had a history of manipulating women and lying to get what he wanted. Claire explained that Daniel had been using Emily as a distraction while he tried to reconcile their marriage. Emily was stunned. She wanted to believe Daniel, but Claire's words resonated with the doubts she had been trying to ignore. She decided to dig deeper into Daniel's past, uncovering a trail of broken relationships and financial troubles. The man she thought she knew was a stranger, and the life they had built together was a house of cards, ready to collapse at any moment. As the truth began to unravel, Emily realized she was in deeper than she had ever imagined. The secret affair that had once felt like a fairy tale was now a nightmare, and she had no idea how to escape it. Emily's life began to spiral into chaos as the anonymous messages continued to arrive. They were no longer just threats. They were detailed accounts of her daily activities, proof that someone was watching her every move. The messages mentioned places she had been, things she had bought, even conversations she had with coworkers. Emily felt like she was living in a nightmare, constantly looking over her shoulder and jumping at every unexpected sound. She tried to confide in Daniel, but his responses were dismissive. He insisted that the messages were nothing more than a prank, perhaps from someone jealous of their relationship. But Emily couldn't shake the feeling that Daniel knew more than he was letting on. His evasiveness only fueled her suspicions, and she began to question everything he had ever told her. The breaking point came one evening, when Emily returned to her apartment to find her door slightly ajar. Her heart raced as she pushed it open, fearing the worst. Inside, the place was ransacked, drawers pulled out, clothes strewn across the floor, and her laptop missing. The intruder had left a note on her kitchen counter. "You should have listened." Terrified, Emily called the police, but they found no evidence of forced entry. Without proof of a break-in, they suggested it might have been someone she knew. Emily's mind immediately went to Daniel. Could he have been behind this? She couldn't bring herself to confront him directly, but she began to distance herself, canceling plans and avoiding his calls. Daniel noticed the change in her behavior and became increasingly persistent. He showed up unannounced at her apartment, demanding to know why she was pulling away. Emily tried to explain her fears, but Daniel grew defensive, accusing her of being paranoid and ungrateful. His anger frightened her, and she realized she no longer felt safe around him. Desperate for answers, Emily decided to investigate Daniel's past on her own. She reached out to an old friend of his, who revealed that Daniel had a history of controlling behavior and had been involved in several messy relationships. The friend warned Emily to be careful, hinting that Daniel wasn't the man he pretended to be. Emily's suspicions were confirmed when she discovered that Daniel had been embezzling money from his real estate firm. He was under investigation, and his lavish lifestyle was funded by stolen funds. The realization hit her like a ton of bricks. Daniel had been using her as a distraction, a way to escape the consequences of his actions. But the most shocking revelation came when Emily found a hidden folder on Daniel's computer, which she accessed during one of their rare meetings at his place. It contained photos of her, taken without her knowledge, along with detailed notes about her habits and routines. There were also messages between Daniel and an unknown number, discussing ways to intimidate her into silence. Emily's world crumbled as she realized the extent of Daniel's manipulation. The anonymous messages, the break-in, the constant surveillance, it had all been part of his plan to control her. She knew she had to get out, but Daniel's threats loomed large in her mind. He had warned her that if she ever left him, he would ruin her life. Torn between fear and the need to escape, Emily began to plan her next move. She knew she couldn't go to the police without evidence, and confronting Daniel directly was too dangerous. But staying in the relationship was no longer an option. As the tension between them reached a boiling point, Emily received one final message: "Meet me at the beach house. We need to talk." Against her better judgment, Emily agreed. She knew it was a risk, but she was desperate for answers. What she didn't know was that the meeting would set off a chain of events that would change her life forever. The beach house, once a place of secret rendezvous, would become the setting for a tragedy that no one could have predicted. Emily's decision to meet Daniel at the beach house was fueled by a mix of fear and desperation. She needed answers, and despite the danger, she felt it was the only way to confront the chaos that had consumed her life. The drive to the secluded beach house was tense, her mind racing with possibilities. She rehearsed what she would say, how she would demand the truth, but deep down, she knew this meeting could go in any direction. When she arrived, the house was eerily quiet. The waves crashed in the distance, their rhythmic sound doing little to calm her nerves. Emily stepped inside, calling out for Daniel, but there was no response. The living room was dimly lit, the furniture slightly askew, as if someone had been in a hurry. Her heart pounded as she moved further into the house, her instincts screaming that something was wrong. Then she saw it: Claire, Daniel's estranged wife, lying unconscious on the floor. A pool of blood spread beneath her head, and a wrench lay nearby. Emily froze, her mind struggling to process the scene. She dropped to her knees, checking for a pulse. Claire was alive but barely breathing. Panicked, Emily fumbled for her phone, dialing 911 with trembling hands. Before she could explain the situation, Daniel appeared in the doorway, his face pale and his hands shaking. He claimed Claire had attacked him, and he had acted in self-defense. His voice was frantic, his words spilling out in a jumbled mess. But Emily couldn't ignore the look in his eyes, a mix of fear and desperation that didn't match his story. The sound of sirens in the distance snapped Emily back to reality. She knew she had to act quickly. Daniel begged her to back up his story, insisting that if she didn't, they would both go down for Claire's assault. Emily's mind raced. She had trusted Daniel once, but now she saw him for who he truly was, a manipulator, a liar, and possibly something far worse. When the police arrived, they found Emily in shock, clutching her phone, and Daniel trying to flee out the back door. The scene was chaotic, with officers securing the area and paramedics rushing to Claire's aid. Emily tried to explain what had happened, but her words came out in fragments, her emotions overwhelming her. As the investigation unfolded, the truth began to emerge. Daniel had lured both Emily and Claire to the beach house, hoping to stage a confrontation that would frame Emily for Claire's assault. He had planned to use the incident to discredit Claire and secure his own freedom, but his plan had gone horribly wrong. Emily's world felt like it was collapsing around her. The man she had once loved was a monster, and she had nearly become his pawn in a deadly game. The police assured her that she was not a suspect, but the trauma of the night left her shaken to her core. Daniel was arrested and charged with attempted murder, among other crimes. The evidence against him was overwhelming, from the messages on his phone to the financial records that exposed his embezzlement. But for Emily, the victory felt hollow. She had escaped with her life, but the scars of the ordeal would stay with her forever. As she left the beach house that night, Emily knew her life would never be the same. The secret affair that had once felt like a dream had turned into a nightmare, and the man she had trusted had nearly destroyed her. But amidst the chaos, there was a glimmer of hope, a chance to start over, to rebuild her life on her own terms. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but Emily was determined to find her way back to the light. The aftermath of the beach house incident was a whirlwind of legal proceedings, media attention, and personal reckoning for Emily. Daniel's arrest made headlines, with the story of his double life and criminal activities captivating the public. Emily found herself thrust into the spotlight, her name and face splashed across news outlets as the young woman who had unwittingly become entangled in a web of deceit and violence. The trial was grueling. Emily had to relive every painful detail of her relationship with Daniel, from the initial charm to the escalating manipulation and threats. She testified about the anonymous messages, the break-in at her apartment, and the night at the beach house that had nearly cost Claire her life. The courtroom was packed, and the weight of so many eyes on her was overwhelming. But Emily knew she had to tell her story, not just for herself, but for Claire and the other women Daniel had hurt. Claire's testimony was equally harrowing. She spoke of years of emotional abuse and manipulation, of Daniel's lies and infidelity. Her voice trembled as she described the night at the beach house, how Daniel had lured her there under false pretenses and attacked her when she confronted him about his affair with Emily. The jury listened intently, their faces a mix of shock and anger as the full extent of Daniel's crimes came to light. When the verdict was finally announced guilty on all counts, Emily felt a wave of relief. Daniel was sentenced to 25 years in prison, a punishment that felt both just and insufficient. While he would face consequences for his actions, the damage he had caused could never be undone. Claire's injuries had left her with permanent brain damage, and she would require lifelong care. Emily, though physically unharmed, carried the emotional scars of the ordeal. In the months that followed, Emily struggled to rebuild her life. She left Los Angeles, unable to bear the memories that haunted every corner of the city. She returned to her hometown in Oregon, seeking solace in the familiar surroundings of her childhood. The quiet streets and open skies were a stark contrast to the chaos she had left behind, and slowly she began to heal. Emily reconnected with old friends and family, finding comfort in their support. She started therapy to work through the trauma, learning to forgive herself for the choices she had made. She even began to pursue her passion for fashion design again, channeling her pain into creativity. But the scars remained. Nightmares of that night at the beach house would jolt her awake, and the sound of a phone notification could send her heart racing. Trusting others was difficult, and the thought of entering a new relationship felt impossible. Yet, Emily was determined to move forward. She had survived something unimaginable, and that strength gave her hope for the future. The story of Emily and Daniel became a cautionary tale, a reminder of how easily love can be twisted into something dangerous. For Emily, it was a chapter of her life she would never forget. But it was also a turning point. She had faced the darkness and emerged stronger, ready to reclaim her life and write a new story, one defined not by tragedy, but by resilience and hope.